Okay folks, welcome back to another Spec Tech Shorts, and today we're going to be looking at doing pour overs at home. Now for me mostly I'm an espresso kind of guy at home, but I do like to do pour overs sometimes, so I have my little V60 here, but I don't have a gooseneck kettle. And I don't have a gooseneck kettle because I don't make them often enough for me to justify that expense, which is why I keep pour over sets like or filter coffee brewers like the AeroPress or like the V60, because on those ones you don't need a gooseneck kettle to make a great coffee. And you might be thinking, well, it's a comb pour over, of course you need to control the flow. And I do a technique that's on our website, roastercentral.ca, where you can keep it pretty consistent even if you don't have one of those. Obviously it does make it more consistent, but you will be fine without it. So I got my brewer here, but we're going to set that aside first because we got to get our coffee. Turn on my scale. I'm going to tare out. I like to do 60 grams per liter or thereabouts. So I'm just going to make a just a 250 milliliter, just an 8-ounce cup. So I'm actually not going to use that full 60 grams. If I'm only using 250 mils, a quarter of that, then I'm only going to use 15 grams of coffee. There we go, 15.2, we'll lose some to the grinder anyway, you know how retention is. Okay, so now that's out of the way, get my hand grinder, make sure to attach the grounds cup below. This one's a bit tricky sometimes, there we go. And then I'll grind this and I'll be sort of right back. Okay, so I'm back with my coffee. Put my brewer on top here, I tear off the scale, filter paper, whoops, that's 2 of them. Get a filter paper, fold it. I'm just gonna pre-wet my filter paper, make sure there's any kind of papery taste is all rinsed out. Oops. Okay. Now one of the things, even if you're not brewing with a gooseneck kettle, one of the things I think is really crucial is going to be temperature. I'm using a medium dark roast here. This is the Mogiana Espresso, so they're a local roaster in Maine, out of Richmond. I am wanting to go for something around 92 Celsius. Now, what you can do is just use a thermometer. This is just a plain old kitchen thermometer. This happens to be in Fahrenheit, most of them probably will, but you can do the conversion, it's pretty easy. Just get your phone out. So I'm just going to throw that in there and see what we read. Okay, so we're hovering at about, let's say 175-ish Fahrenheit, and that's too cold. I want about 92 degrees Celsius, so I'm just going to heat this a bit and then turn it off. 197 Fahrenheit would be about 92 Celsius. Okay, and there we go. Almost 200. Easy as that. Okay, so now that we are ready to brew, we got our water at the right temperature, we have our coffee ground. I'm going to turn on my scale, make sure my measurements were correct. 15.2 grams, we didn't lose any to the grinder, would you look at that? So tear it out. And the other thing you want to have is a spoon. So I just got a little spoon here. So I'm going to pour my bloom, and this is going to be about twice or 3 times the weight of coffee I put in, so somewhere between 30 and 45 grams. Oops, that's 51, but that's okay. Grab your spoon, give it a little stir. You can even pick the whole brew up and give it a little shake. We just want to make sure there's no dry spots. Oh, I forgot to start my timer. Look at that, silly goose. And I accidentally teared my scale. Well, that's all right. So we know we put in 15 grams, so we're going to 50 grams, so we're going to 250. So now I like to bloom for, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. honestly, I just want to make sure that all the gases in it and can come up. So 22, let's say 22 seconds. It's really, you know, making pour overs at home can be hard. It'll also be really easy. So I'm going to pour. I'm still trying to do a bit of a spiral pattern here when I pour, but it's not as essential. There we go. Now give it a stir. After you finished, you added all your water weight. Give it a stir. And pick it up again. Another small little shake. And now we wait. And that's pretty much it. So if you do the stir and the movements where you're making sure that all the coffee grounds and the hot water are mixed together and there's no dry spots, you should get a fairly consistent pour over every time, even if you're not using a gooseneck kettle. One of the things I like about the AeroPress, as opposed to the V60, is that there's no benefit to a gooseneck kettle at all. You're just throwing water in there and you're giving it a stir, right? That's an immersion brewer. The V60 is a percolation brewer, so the water passes through. And so you just want to make sure that you're doing those sort of movements to keep the extraction consistent, keep the amount of water and coffee interaction consistent. And as long as you're sticking to your weights, then you should be getting, even without a gooseneck kettle, a pretty delicious cup of coffee every morning. This particular brew, usually 2 or 3 minutes. I've seen people who say, you know, it goes for 4, and that's fine. One thing I wouldn't do is get caught up in what people on the internet say, or indeed what I say, right? You know, if you're making a coffee and you love the way you're making it, just enjoy that coffee. You don't, you know, just because somebody else doesn't think you're doing it right doesn't mean it's not a great coffee. Besides, you're the one drinking it. So then we're just I'm gonna grab a cup while this kind of finishes dripping. Okay. Sometimes I want a mug, but for pour over coffee, I think a glass is kind of nice for filter coffee. All right. So then I'm gonna lift this up, just carry it over to my compost. La voila. So there you go, that's how to do a V60 at home. Now, of course, if you're looking to spice things up, I would recommend actually looking into past barista competitions and seeing what kind of recipes they used and trying to mimic those. I think that's the best way to get like a really interesting brew at home, just using the coffee you're using. But other than that, you know, play around with your grind size, play around with your temperature. Generally speaking, a lower temperature is going to be a little bit better for a darker roast. You'll get rid of some of the bitterness that can happen when you brew dark roasts. And generally speaking, a higher temperature is going to be better for a light roast. You kind of want it as hot as you can because that might get rid of some of the sourness that can happen when you're brewing a light roast. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.